US history, it's full of infamous leaks that blew the government wide open. But there's one set of leaks that stands head and shoulders above the others. In 2013, a contractor with the National Security Agency, or NSA, quietly handed a cache of documents to The Guardian. These detailed how the NSA had been hoovering up information on millions of Americans while lying to Congress. It was the single most explosive story of the post-9/11 era. The man behind it all? Well, that was Edward Snowden, a whiz from North Carolina. Snowden is today infamous. Currently, he's holed up in asylum in Russia. He's both loved and loathed by millions. To some, he's a fearless whistleblower who sacrificed everything to do what was right. To others, he's the 21st century version of a Cold War defector. But the truth, it's more complex than either of those portrayals. Snowden's life is one of contradictions, of surprises, and enough shades of grey to fill a million E.L. James novels. Today we investigate the man behind the most notorious leak in American history. If you know the name Elizabeth City, North Carolina, it's likely because of the Coast Guard base. By some measures, the busiest in the United States, the base dominates the lives of local residents. The Snowdens, they were no exception. When Edward Joseph Snowden was born on June the 21st, 1983, it was into a family with deep military connections. Young Snowden's maternal grandfather, Edward J. Barrett, was a Rear Admiral, and his father, Lonnie, also worked in the Coast Guard. For Snowden, that meant a childhood instilled with deep respect for the services. But it was also a childhood marked by something more tragic, the slow breakdown of his parents' marriage. Lonnie and Elizabeth Snowden, known to her friends as Wendy, were high school sweethearts who'd married young. Although Wendy suffered from epilepsy, it wasn't debilitating. She managed to get a job as a Maryland district court clerk, moving the family north in 1992. But if the Snowdens were expecting their new lives in Maryland to be easy, well, they were mistaken. As Wendy and Lon's marriage drifted, young Snowden was stumbling into a crisis at high school. Despite being clearly intelligent, the teenage boy, he didn't really excel at anything. When he missed 4 months study after catching glandular fever in 1998, it knocked him back to a place that he couldn't recover from. He flunked out of high school. Perhaps desperate to salve something from this debacle, Snowden enrolled in computer classes at Anne Arundel Community College. But his prospects, they were pretty low. Message board posts he left around this time tinged with cheerful desperation about being unemployed. The family stumbled on for another couple of years, but by 2001, the writing was on the wall. Wendy and Lon split, and Wendy took off for Ellicott City near Baltimore. 1 year later, 19-year-old Snowden, he followed her. At this stage, Edward Snowden was about as far from a potential biographic subject as you're likely to get. His only achievement was being webmaster of an anime message board. Yet, even now, there were two clues as to his future notoriety. The first was his incomparable tech skills. After enrolling at Anne Arundel, Snowden had discovered that he had not just an aptitude for computers, but a genius. Ellicott City is home to somewhere that's going to become very important to our story. It's home to the NSA's headquarters. Unfortunately, their real life isn't as narratively pleasing as fiction, and we'll need to take a quick detour in order to get there. On March the 20th, 2003, the US invaded Iraq. Although the main fighting was over by the end of May, a call for new recruits went out nationwide. This call struck a chord with the unemployed Snowden. Maybe it was his family's Coast Guard backgrounds, but for whatever reason, Snowden felt compelled to join up. In May 2004, he reported for duty at Fort Benning, Georgia. His training, it didn't last long. Snowden later claims that he broke both legs, but the army claimed he flunked out with shin splints. Either way, the result was the same. After barely a month, Snowden was discharged. He returned to Maryland, again, an unemployed failure. Finally, in 2005, Snowden got a security guard job at Maryland's Center for Advanced Study of Language. And it was really here that our story could have ended, except for one little fact. That center, it was backed by the NSA, and the NSA were desperate to recruit computer geeks. After the Soviet Union fell all the way back in 1991, America's intelligence agencies, they went through an era of downsizing and shedding of staff. That all changed on September the 11th, 2001. Faced with the new threat of terrorism, the agencies were desperate to make up for lost time. They were also desperate to catch up with evolving tech. Way into the 2000s, the senior staff was so technologically illiterate that it would be a challenge for them to distinguish the difference between a laptop and a sandwich. And with that, it was clearly time to start hiring the best tech guys, and one of the best just happened to be working as an NSA security guard. Within months, Snowden had switched his security job for IT. He must have made an impression because not 2 years after flunking out of basic military training in mid-2006, young Snowden got a job offer from the CIA. Saying yes to that offer would turn out to be a key decision in his life. The young IT genius was whisked away to Geneva in Switzerland in 2007. While his job was a mixture of cool and not so cool, from maintaining network security to just fixing the aircon, the money it paid was certainly no joke. As a CIA technician, Snowden was able to live every boy's James Bond fantasies. He bought a brand new BMW, befriended an Estonian rock star, and played the stock market, boasting that it lost $20,000 in a single month. He also traveled extensively, washing up in Rome, Bosnia, and in London. Not that his opinions of these places were always PC. Of London's vibrant Muslim community, he wrote they were terrifying. I didn't want to get out of the car. Yet even in this dream job, disillusionment could creep in. In 2008, Snowden supposedly witnessed the CIA arranging for a banker to be caught drunk driving and then offering to suppress the charge in return for cooperation. The Swiss authorities, they've denied this ever happened. Still, the anguish that Snowden felt working for the CIA, it was certainly real. He would later claim, "Much of what I saw in Geneva really disillusioned me about how my government functions. I realized that I was a part of something that was doing far more harm than good." Not that he seems like a potential whistleblower just yet. When the New York Times published a leaked Pentagon plan to attack Iran in 2009, Snowden raged online that anyone who leaked such information to the press should be shot in the balls. Still, there was no doubt that Snowden was struggling with something in Geneva, and it was making him angry. In February of 2009, he abruptly resigned from the CIA. Later, sources in the agency said that he'd been on the verge of being fired for trying to hack into their database. Back in the United States, the young computer whiz, he underwent a change. His message board posts became full of angry rants against government programs like social welfare and invective against Obama's new administration. In a world full of angry young men, it seemed Edward Snowden was simply another voice screaming into the void. But there was one crucial difference here. Snowden was still useful. Within a couple of months of leaving the CIA, Snowden had a new job, this time as a contractor for Dell working on NSA projects. The first was working on anti-cyber spying software in Tokyo. For a lifelong anime fan, moving to Japan should have been a dream come true, but instead, it plunged Snowden into a moral nightmare. Video at a National Press Club event. Known as Collateral Murder, it showed US military pilots gunning down 2 Reuters journalists mistaken for terrorists in Baghdad in 2007. The video was the first major scoop in the history of WikiLeaks. It was also the beginning of the biggest intelligence leak in history. Throughout the rest of the year, WikiLeaks, The Guardian, The New York Times, and Der Spiegel published the Afghan war logs, the Iraq war logs, and finally, a trove of US diplomatic cables that were leaked. Supplied to WikiLeaks by intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning, the classified files turned the world's opinion of the United States upside down. But not Edward Snowden's. Over in Japan, the young IT professional had become increasingly disturbed by the work the NSA was up to. On February the 18th, 2010, he posted on a message board, "It really concerns me how little this sort of corporate behavior bothers those outside of technology circles. Society really seems to have developed an unquestioning obedience towards spooky types." It wasn't until Manning's leaks shook the media that Snowden seems to have decided to reveal the NSA's secrets. In 2011, Dell transferred him back to Maryland from Japan. On the outside, this was perfect for Snowden. He moved in with his younger girlfriend, the free-spirited Lindsay Mills. Inside, Snowden had made a decision. It was while back in Maryland that he started downloading the documents that he would soon release to the entire world. In 2012, Snowden contacted the Tor Project, an online community dedicated to providing everyone with the tools needed to encrypt their internet activity. While this seems innocuous enough, Tor was deeply connected with WikiLeaks. Many have suggested that Snowden made contact with Tor as a way of getting to Assange. If that was the plan, though, it soon ran into trouble with a capital T. On June the 19th, 2012, the WikiLeaks founder fled to the Ecuadorian embassy in London to avoid an arrest on a rape charge. The subsequent media circus may have made Snowden rethink WikiLeaks as the place to publish his revelations. By now, Snowden and Mills, they were in Hawaii, where Snowden had to work on the NSA's Regional Cryptological Center. At this point, he was actively looking for opportunities to steal documents. But he may have also been looking for something else: validation for his genius. That summer, Snowden hacked the answers for an NSA job promotion test and subsequently aced it. When he was offered a new position, he got angry that it wasn't high enough up and he rejected it. The NSA's deputy director would later tell reporters that he considers this the moment when Snowden turned on the agency. Whatever the truth, it wasn't only at work that people were noticing the change in Snowden. In July 2012, Lindsay Mills blogged that the couple's relationship in Hawaii was under stress. By October, she was writing about heavy conversations and stress paralysis. Whatever was preying on Snowden's mind, it was certainly tormenting them both. That Thanksgiving, Mills returned to the US mainland to see her family for an extended break. While he was away, Snowden finally set the wheels of his plan in motion. On December 1st, 2012, Guardian columnist and vocal WikiLeaks defender Glenn Greenwald got a rather unusual email. This email suggested that he set up PGP encryption software on his laptop. Like anyone getting such a paranoid email, Greenwald ignored it, assuming the sender was a crank. Little did Greenwald know that this was his first contact with the man who would soon make his career. A month after being frozen out by Greenwald, Snowden tried again. This time he contacted the journalist's friend, documentary maker Laura Poitras. Poitras was deeply connected to the Tor project that we mentioned earlier. When she first heard from Snowden, she assumed that he was trying to entrap her. But when her contacts at Tor gave Snowden the green light, she began to listen. Using a fake name, Snowden told Poitras that he was a high-ranking intelligence officer. This was a total lie, but the next part, it wasn't. He told her that he could get a hold of files that would paint the US in a very bad light. If Poitras wanted to see them, all she had to do was get Greenwald on board. That February, Snowden changed jobs again. While still working at the NSA's Hawaii Center, he took a pay cut to move from contracting with Dell to Booz Allen Hamilton. His new role was a sysadmin, a role with two unbelievable bonuses for the potential leaker. One, it made Snowden one of the only people at the NSA with a legitimate reason to carry normally forbidden thumb drives, and two, it gave him access to almost the entire system. Still, some to this day are skeptical that even a sysadmin could have accessed so many confidential areas without help. It's thought Snowden may have stolen 14 people's login credentials to maximize his reach. Pro-Snowden sources say that he used his sysadmin title to trick people into handing them over. Anti-Snowden sources say that he may have received help from Russian intelligence. Back in the real world, Poitras was desperately trying to convince Greenwald that her source was on the level. That March, they tentatively agreed to meet Snowden face to face. Yet the trio, they missed their first chance that very month. On March the 30th, Snowden flew back to the US mainland, but rather